is going to be delivered by a partner at Ernst Young, Ghana. Let's welcome Mr. Djabanor Narh.
Honorable Minister, distinguished diasporans, I'd like to start by saying that I'm actually a diasporan myself. I stayed abroad for about 10 years, and I've been in Ghana for the last 20 years, and I'm still adjusting. The short presentation I'm going to give to you today is really based upon practical experience that I've experienced myself, as well as advice we've given to, I guess, some of the people here today. And we are really going to be focusing on the perspective of people who are interested in small and medium type of businesses. Large-scale businesses have their own challenges, but there are peculiar challenges related to small and medium-scale businesses. First and foremost, when any of my colleagues or friends give me advice, staying either in the UK or US, I want to come back to Ghana to set up, I ask them, you at least need about 18 months to 2 years to adjust. You need to have a house, you need to have a good, decent form of transport, and a few basic things. If you happen to be keeping 2 homes, then you need to ensure that you have enough funds to maintain a home abroad and to maintain a home in Ghana. Because things in Ghana sometimes do take time. It takes time. And the other key thing that you get to learn over time as well, it takes a network. Almost everything that you try and achieve in Ghana is easier and simpler and much more effective if you have a network and you have good advice. It applies for your personal life in Ghana as well as applies when you're trying to establish, especially a small and medium-scale business in Ghana. So the first thing, obviously, is to try and think of what is the business concept? What do you want to set up in Ghana? You might be already providing some services abroad that you want to come and set up here, or you might come and visit and find out what you think your resources and skills and contacts might enable you to do. And there are a number of rules of the road for doing that. Some, for example, are to do with listening to policies which have been presented and figuring out which of those policies are best suited to some of the skills that you might have. But you don't just stop there. Behind each policy, there are opportunities which are specific. So let me give you an example. A few years back, because of the introduction of Ghana's oil find, clearly the oil and gas sector is a huge area, but it's also an area which requires huge investment and huge technical expertise. So a local content law was passed, and within that local content law, there are about 10 areas, 10 main categories, which have been set aside for all these big players to transfer to Ghanaians or Ghanaians from the diaspora over a period of 10 years. Okay. These 10 areas, there are some which require significant capital, there are some which require a certain type of expertise, and some which require partnerships. And these large organizations are required to transfer to Ghanaians over a specific period of time. So sometimes when people come to us and ask us what they want to achieve, especially in this area, we go through the policy with them, we go through the specifics with them, and we pick out those areas and ideas that might be suitable for them. Likewise, the government has also come up with a policy of private-public partnerships. The gentleman sitting down on the left is one of Ghana's foremost legal experts and also PPP specialists. There's a significant opportunity for organizations to participate with governments to implement certain projects, but it's a minefield. So you need to have people who can give you an indication of what is required. So I guess what I'm saying is that identify some of those policies, figure out what you think might be suitable for you, then home in on your efforts. The second thing is really about networks. If you're fortunate enough, based on the schools that you went to or your family, you have access to trusted advisors, fine. If not, we really encourage some of the folks who come and see us to engage or participate in a number of the professional organizations, such as the AGI. Almost every sector in Ghana has got a professional organization, and there you have access to people who have done similar things to what you're trying to achieve, or obviously have walked that road and can provide you deep insights into what you're trying to achieve. We really encourage people, but before you set out, try and go to some of those entities and gain first-hand advice. Crucial and important. The third thing is access to data. Yes, a lot of people say that it's difficult to get data in Ghana, but there are sources. Once you decide on an area, there are potential areas of getting data. So one example is the Ghana Statistical Service conducts a Ghana Living Standard Survey once every 4 to 6 years and provides quite rich information about statistics and data which could potentially be relevant to you in the different sectors that you might be participating in. So that is certainly a useful source of data. And there are obviously other sector-specific data. So once you participate in some of these professional organizations, you certainly gain access to some of this data, which can be very useful. The fourth area, especially startups, and has been increasing over the years in Ghana, is the number of incubators, accelerators, and startups in a number of areas. Some for climate and innovation, others for obviously oil and gas, others for technology, others for financial services, and the like. The slides have now come up. And in those areas, you can certainly gain a lot of information. Whoever's controlling the slides, kindly go up a second. Go up. Policy enablers. Go to the next slide. Go to the next slide. I just want to give you an example of the oil and gas example I was talking about. Go to the next slide. The next slide. Keep going, keep going. The slide after this. Okay. So, for example, this focuses on the local content opportunities in Ghana. There are 10 areas representing by those 10 bubbles. The larger the bubble, the bigger the opportunity. The color red means that in Ghana at the moment, we don't have local capacity. So where it's big, where it's red, there's significant opportunity for people who have expertise in that area to play with. Where it's small and green, that means there's a relatively higher capacity here. So the key point of this information is that there are certain areas in Ghana where we lack the local capacity and resource. And there are significant opportunities from folks from the diaspora who might have partnerships that can enable them tap the opportunities into some of those areas. And this information is out there. It's up to you to go to the right organizations, the right professional associations to get this information to focus your mind. And this information is out there. Clearly, whatever business you're going to focus on is all about your expertise, your resources, time to market, and the most crucial thing is the network of support. You really, really need to have a network of support that can enable you along the way. And that network would enable you, keep going, to address the practical challenges of doing business in Ghana. Registering a business, as some of you might know, if you don't have a trusted advisor, could be quite an arduous task. Because the challenge in Ghana is sometimes that you might have the resources, but you might not have the time. Okay, registering your business, registering your property, trying to get credits. And another critical one is establishing and enforcing contracts. So just give you a brief example. I set up a business about 15, 18 years ago with some very good friends of mine. The business went fairly well, but I did it with friends. We didn't have a formal contract in place. And it got to a certain point in the business, we had both made different assumptions of a very thriving business. And fortunately, we had a mutual friend who was a lawyer who would enable us to go back and put in place a contract which enabled us to manage our affairs. So in Ghana as well, it's crucially important to ensure that you've got effective contracts in place. And because of rule of law in Ghana, you can actually enforce them. But you need to have that effective contract in place in the first place. And we always encourage people to get the best lawyer you can afford. Not just any lawyer, the best lawyer you can afford. Because trust me, it really will make a difference once your business thrives or indeed when you have challenges. Then, if whatever business you are starting, especially a startup, you really need to understand the labor regulations. You might have experiences elsewhere, but there are some nuances about the labor regulations in Ghana. Yet again, your trusted advisor can help you address them. And that can really make all the difference in the type of business that you have and how you run it. And there are practical ways of doing that. Time and money, mentioned that already, is really, those are the two things to focus on. You might have the cash, but you don't have the network, you don't have the time, because things take a while and you need to plan and budget for that. In Ghana, there's a startup ecosystem. It's maturing. It starts off with there are a lot of information providers who can certainly provide you all the information that you need. You also have professional associations, which I talked about. You have government and government policies. There's a lot of assistance you can certainly get from the Ministry of Trade, all the initiatives that are being promoted as well. There are certainly a lot of financial institutions, a lot of new ones, and more importantly now, because of the new pension laws, the pension funds themselves have cash to invest in businesses, and they're providing an alternative source of medium to long-term funds as well. So the ecosystem is there, it's maturing, and it's up to us, those diasporans who are here, to find out about it and take advantage of it. I'll just go into some detail on some of them. We've talked about information sources already. There are a number of them, a number of trade and professional associations, and we really, really encourage you to use them. There are also a lot of award programs going on, and those award shows also provide an opportunity for you to meet successful entrepreneurs in the space that you want to participate in. And we encourage you to do that, and it's certainly a key enabler for a lot of SMEs that we provide advisory services to. Data sources. There's a lot of data out there from Ghana Living Standard Survey. Let's go to the next slide. I'm just telling you about the sources. The National Communication Authority, depending on what industry you're in, there's a lot of rich data out there if you go and ask for it and you have the time to wait. There's also an integrated business establishment survey, which has a lot of rich information about industry. So this one district, one factory that the Honorable Minister just talked about, there's a lot of information out there which can give you a good basis of doing your work. Investment incentives. Clearly, as a country, there are a lot of investment incentives. Go to the next slide. And those investment incentives, you have the usual ones for VAT and tax. And the critical thing is that there have been a lot of changes by the new government. So it's important to understand them, to figure out how you can take advantage of them. So that's number one. Let's go to the next slide. The Ghana Investment Promotion Center, as you'll probably be aware, has a lot of incentives. But the key thing there is that some of those incentives are not automatic. You have to apply for them. Some of them might require parliamentary approval. So you have to go through a process. First is getting the information, understanding them, speak to people who have taken advantage of them, then present your story. Then there are also industry-specific incentives. Some are locational, some are for agric. Those of you interested in agriculture, there's a huge benefit in terms of a huge reduction in the tax rate. Likewise for cocoa processing, rural banking, waste processing, and a number of other things. But they are over a concessionary period. So you need to understand them, you need to figure out how to take advantage of them and to your best interest. There are also other incentives to do with location, especially in the manufacturing space. So one district, one factory, for example, if you locate your factory out of Accra, out of a regional capital, doing a district rural area, there are significantly more advantages to take advantage of. But you also need to bear in mind the potential high costs. So it's a trade-off, but you need to get that information and take advantage of it. Likewise, a lot of opportunities in terms of exemption for VAT, depending on what sector. This is just to give you some of them: educational services, laboratory, cattle, water, and the like. So all these incentives are actually out there. The Free Zones Act, some of you might certainly be aware of that. If you have products that are relevant to the ECOWAS region. Certainly, Ghana is the place to be, but you should be in a position to export 70% of those items out of Ghana and the other 30% here, and just certain incentives that you can take advantage of. As I indicated earlier, there are a number of incubators and accelerators that help you set up. Funding, the next slide, funding is always a challenge, but increasingly, there are a lot of different sources of funding. You start off, obviously, when you get the concept based on your own, maybe personal funds from family and friends. But in Ghana today, you have other sources of funds from seed capital, angel investments, right through to grants, banks, then obviously the stock exchange. Even the stock exchange as well has a specific offering for SMEs as well. So there are a number of possibilities that were not available in the country some time back, but they are available today for SMEs to take advantage of. There are also a number of actors who are out there to help small and medium-scale investors. So if you take the Invest in Africa intervention, for example, it pulls together small businesses with large-scale organizations. They have a portal, and the portal basically has the purchasing power of about 20 or 30 large corporates in Ghana, and they buy through the portal. So what happens is that the SME has to register, go online, gets an opportunity to participate, and this has obviously been expanded. The Climate Innovation Center, for example, is a consortium with a SHESI, SNV, a UN institution, and Ernst Young to support folks who have got green initiatives. And what the Climate Innovation Center essentially provides, it provides you with knowledge, it provides you with support, incubation opportunities, and supports you through the funding phase as well, and through the growth phases as well. So there are a lot of other entities. InnoHub is a new entity that is also doing significantly well in that area. The funding sources are also out there. This happens to be, obviously you may see that at all. For specialist areas, there are different funding sources, grants, debt, equity, based upon specific criteria, both within Ghana or also outside Ghana, who are specifically set up to support projects and opportunities in country. So you might be based out of Ghana, but the head office of that funding agency might happen to be in your location, but very interested in investing in Ghana, and you can take advantage of that as well. So essentially, the ecosystem for startups is there, but the key message is really establishing a good network. If you don't have a personal network, then the best way of going about that is to engage key people through professional organizations and trusted advisors. Thank you very much.